So, guys, welcome back to the Kirk podcast. Today, I have a man who is an absolute monster in the world of sleep, sports performance, and also a fellow Virgo. So, be prepared for some extremely OCD and very unique ways of talking about a subject which a lot of people, since I started this podcast, have asked me would I be able to bring on a sleep expert or speak about the importance of sleep, recovery, all that type of stuff myself. And if I'm honest, I'm a firm believer that in life you stay in your lane when it comes to talking about certain subjects. So, although I know certain principles when it comes to sleep and recovery, I certainly don't know as much as the man who I've brought on today's podcast, Nick Littlehales. Um, Nick has already spoken to our Built to Last community. Was it during COVID? COVID, Nick, when I managed to sort of persuade you onto the
The COVID period's sort of been locked away somewhere.
yes,
But
yeah.
I think it probably was, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think there's so many different people, Nick, on social media out
hmm
there, talking about sleep. And I'm not just saying this because you're here, but one of the
hmm
things I love about the way you look at things is it's a little bit different to some of the generic advice that, as we spoke before we jumped on this podcast, we sat
hmm
down with one of our friends, doesn't really help people, does it? So when I learn more about Nick's story, I mean, one, incredibly inspirational in some of the teams you've worked with, the elite athletes you've worked with. But I think the way you look at sleep, high performance recovery is very unique to any single person that I've come across, because there's loads of books out there. I've read certain books, and I'm not saying none of these things are wrong, but what I love about Nick is just the way he looks at things in a real practical, deeper level to the average sleep guru. So first and foremost, Nick, I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the Kirky Miller podcast, and I'm really grateful for your time. And I will be squeezing as much as I possibly can out of this hour, because I just know, even with the conversation when we had a coffee with our friend before this, um, you pro- you're probably someone I want to get on multiple times, because I think you're an absolute genius in what you do. So thank you so much for your time, Nick.
Bit overwhelming. And you called me a monster. Amazing.
um, but but yeah, look, for any football fans listening, I mean, Nick's an extremely humble man, and that's probably one of the reasons you've been able to work with some of the athletes you have, and the teams, and events, and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, some of the teams you work with are the best in the world, right? Manchester United, Arsenal, international teams too, Team Sky. Um, but yeah, where did the fascination for like sleep, high performance recovery, where did it first come from?
I just happened to fall into what you classify as a sleep industry. I work for a big company. Most people won't be aware of them, called Slumberland. It was a big brand.
Mm,
They made mattresses and pillows and stuff like that. It wasn't really my scene because I wanted to be a sportsman when I was a kid
yeah.
and teenager. Did a little bit of golf for a few years.
Mm.
But I married my childhood sweetheart and ended up in the furniture industry. I ended up in the sleep industry. And, you mentioned Virgos. Um, don't necessarily like to be told to do things too much.
If Gabby's listening to this, I'm not the only one, babe. I'm not the only one.
But so I think when I was playing golf, it's very independent. You get out of it what you put in.
Yeah.
Um, and I suppose that sort of stayed around.
Mm.
And as I moved into jobs as sales representative or area manager or running a store or something like that, I always sort of looked at something and thought, I want to turn that upside down and do it differently.
Why?
Because it seemed like they've been doing it like that for so long
Mm.
and they won't change it, that it's almost like, well, just change it and see what happens. Look at it in a different way. I don't know. I've sort of always been a bit like that. So what happened was I was always successful. I wasn't really doing it on purpose, but I found myself as Slumberland's international sales and marketing director after a very short number of years. Not qualified for it, but there was a lot of logic, common sense.
Yeah.
Um, you look at a wall in front of you and you go, I can't climb over that. Well, I was looking left and right and seeing you could walk around it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
that kind of thing. So we didn't have a sleep council in the UK, which is like a generic body that represents the world of sleep, this big health pillar. And yet it was all about mattress manufacturers, bed manufacturers, and retailers who sold beds. And it was such a cottage industry. It was not at the forefront of performance, and yet they always talked how important sleep was. So I set that up with some colleagues and was chairman of that for a while. Our company suddenly became a much bigger group company, which created a lot of challenges. And I suppose, I just got to the particular point where I was just bored with hearing how important sleep was. But all this generic information wasn't helping me or anybody. So I sort of gave up on it and thought, I'd hit my early 40s. So that midlife crisis decade. And decided to jack it all in and go and do something else. And it was during that period of time, because my UK office was Oldham, Manchester, that I happened to get involved with the local football club, Oldham Athletic. I happened to write a check out to sponsor their shirts. That created, I got invited to some football events locally. That ended up, I was standing in a room and there was Alex Ferguson, because he was the manager of the club down the road called Manchester United. In those days, City wasn't figuring too much. Things have turned a little bit.
The noisy neighbours, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. And, you get asked a question and you have to tell them what you do. And I went, I'm in the mattress and bed world, and I'm the director. I don't know. And so you're just trying to make conversation. It was probably nothing more than, in football. Do you do anything with recovery, sleep, beds, anything like that?
Sir Alex asked you this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm trying to explain what I do, don't I?
Yeah.
And he just went, no. So then I got a phone call from the local physio at the club, a guy called Dave Fever, who just said, Alex has asked us all the question, do we do anything in this area? We all said no. So that's his fascination. If we don't know about something, let's go and find out about it. If something comes out of it, great. If something doesn't, tick it off the box. So anybody else, Kirk? Any other time? Me talking sleep-ish with a manager of a football club back in the late 90s?
Yeah.
Whoa, that would have ended with a glass of wine and never gone anywhere. But that sort of started a little journey. And a lot of things that I'd learnt was never talked about. So I'd learnt about chronotypes. I'd learnt about...
For the most basic listener, a chronotype, explain to someone who hasn't got a clue about sleep, what does that mean? Because I know there's so many misconceptions with these things.
Yeah, well, it's principally, my grandparents would talk about owls and larks, the birds, and one's nighttime, one's morning. And suddenly you sort of reflect on that and then realise that it's a little genetic twist, right? And that means we respond to certain things. So the PMs have got a sort of couple of hours phase delay on how they get going in the morning. Then they have this little second wind later on, and they can be very creative when most people are asleep. So AMers like to wake up early and go to bed early. PMers don't like to wake up early. And that sort of always fascinated me about why isn't that talked about? Surely that's part of the whole subject matter. Get your 8 hours or you're going to die. And I thought, well, I've not met anybody who ever gets a solid 8 hours. And, I know a few nurses and surgeons and pilots and parents. They just ignore that. So nobody's having any impact. So it's literally, and I was designing mattresses, Kirk, right?
Yeah.
And what always fascinated me is I could design a mattress.
Yeah.
It's not scientific, but it was basically a bit like a pair of shoes, It doesn't matter what shoes you're going to put on your feet, Wellington boots, trainers, football boots, slippers, sliders. You've got a size. So you can't put a size 12 on a size 9. You can't put your foot in a size 6. So it's kind of like you'd take a human profile, and there would be something I'd also learned, that in that sort of human hunter-gatherer circadian rhythm type of world, that curling up in a fetal position on the opposite side to your dominant side, because that's less sensitive,
Mm.
reveals your stronger side to protect you if you were sleeping outside. Right? So if there's any sort of fear factor coming your way, noises or whatever, then you can kind of protect yourself. If you're ambidextrous, the one you're going to hit me with. Your opposite side's probably less sensitive, because you're doing everything with the right side of your body. And it's sort of like the fetal position is that very sort of womb-like thing, and it creates a really nice postural balance. It sort of means that you can wander into those sleep states and sort of. So anyway, you create a mattress
Mm-hmm.
for Kirk Miller, 6'2", eyes are blue.
I wish I was 6'2", but
and you'd sort of take that and go, lie them on this surface, and you want them to completely release into it, just like lying in a pool with your head right back. You float. And the next person next door to you is only 60 kilograms, and the other person who's 200 kilograms do exactly the same. Whoa, water just displaces and holds you like that. So that sort of fought against all the things that went on in my industry, because everybody wanted me to take that description off the product, that this is for somebody with this profile,
mm-hmm.
because that meant it was only people who got that profile would buy that product,
Mm-hmm.
when actually they wanted to sell any mattress to anybody.
Even though, yeah, like you just said, if someone's a size 6 trying to fit in a size 9, it's not going to work. And it's the same principle with the bed.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
because there was so much emphasis on get a good mattress and you get a good night's sleep. And so, well, if you're making those statements that it's the mattress and the bed that's going to give you all of this great sleep when you're in the bedroom, then why isn't it at least the right fit?
Mm.
And then you've got people with disabilities, you've got people, so there's all sorts of things, isn't it? And as you grow up, you change and grow and shift. So it just made not so. But basically, I could take these things I go and see the physio,
Mm-hmm.
and because that was my competence at that particular time,
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of other information, but couldn't use it in my industry because they didn't want me to talk about it.
Mm.
But with the physio, not a problem. So he asked me to try and sort out one of his centre halves. Anybody who knows Manchester United is old enough, a guy called Gary Pallister. And he had a lot of back issues. So the physio sort of I'm constantly rehabilitating him. He's constantly debilitating himself when he leaves the training ground. We can't make him train. We can't do anything. But he can play, but he has to recover like mad afterwards.
So he weren't training at all at that point, Nick?
No.
So I know there was I was an obsessive Manchester United fan, so we were well aware of Gary Pallister's bad back but
I'll tell you what about the journey that, from the late 90s to here. I mean, sometimes it's quite difficult to remember what was going on because you were not taking pictures.
Yes.
or
Yeah.
making notes,
Yeah.
It was sort of just fluid conversation.
Correct.
And so he asked me to go and check his stuff out. And I did. And classically, he's got a rock hard mattress, orthopedic, made by, chiropractors, which the industry just makes up, by the way.
What they make it? What you should have a hard
just make it as hard as you can.
Okay.
There's no science to it. Just make it hard.
Why was there that belief at the time, or that message?
I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
I think it was more to do with a good bed lasts a long time.
Okay.
Like 20, 25 years. And a firm mattress has got something to do with orthopedic. So it sort of sounds like you're sleeping on the right thing if it's got an orthopedic title to it. I don't really know where it came from, but
Yeah.
there was a little thing which will sound absolutely daft, but because we kept mattresses for such a long time, average was like well over 25 years. Most people don't even buy a mattress until they're probably well into their 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
And when they do buy one, they expect it to last forever.
Yeah.
You sleep in hotels and on other people's beds and all sorts of stuff. So the one thing about it is when your mattress starts to collapse, you'd put a board between the mattress and the base
Yeah.
to firm it back up again.
Okay.
to stop it collapsing.
Yeah,
Right?
I actually remember. I
And
think
I
there's
actually think, you know, on reflect, I think that's where you made a bad mattress better by sliding a board underneath it,
that makes
like a
total
door.
sense, Nick. Because I remember me and my brother when we had you jumping up and
Yeah,
down on
your mum and dad
beds.
would probably do it.
You jumping up and down on beds. You snapping the pieces of wood
Yeah,
underneath,
the
and it's like
slats and everything.
yeah, you got to replace them. So whereas this hard bed was bulletproof, so
Yeah,
to
yeah.
speak.
And I'd never met, I'd go along to orthopedic surgeons, chiropractors, osteopaths, and go, I said, no, 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 no. We treat you on a firm surface, just like a physio would, to be able to manipulate, to be able to do this and the other. But don't sleep on it
Yeah.
because you're going to adopt certain positions that's going to be completely counterproductive.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit like that. So when the physio says, go and have a look at his room,
Yeah.
you're sort of going, well, no wonder he's debilitated because he's moving around so much to try and get comfortable. Loads of different types of pillows and all this. And he's lying on this top surface, just pushing the hips and the shoulders up, putting and it's so I sort of was able to make a few adjustments, with a few layers. So we got a better balance on it. And suddenly the physio started to see improvements. It wasn't solving his lower back, but we were making inroads into he would be able to treat him slightly less or in a slightly different way. That he actually was able to do a little bit of training and some work in the gym or some swimming.
Mm.
And it was little things like that, even to the point his wife rang up the physio and probably said, this is amazing because he's such a nightmare to sleep with. Do you know what I mean? He gets hot, he gets sweaty, he's tossing and turning, he's getting up and all this stuff. It's a nightmare. But now my sleep's been great. So it was a kind of like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And, long old story, but it started to go, what else do you know, Nick? And anybody who loves Manchester United back in those days, a long, long time ago.
But when they were winning doubles and trebles.
When they were winning doubles and trebles. There was a little group of people called the Class of '92. David Beckham and the Nevilles and Nicky Butt,
Paul Scholes.
Paul Scholes.
Yeah.
And basically, whatever Alex told them to do, they'd do it. Right? So I was asked to go there one day. I'm still working my contract out with Slumberland, but they weren't interested.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing. It was just Dave asked me a question and said, would you talk to the players? And so I was there in the players' lounge one day. They'd been to training, had some lunch, and the only player who came up and had a chat with me about, mattresses could help you physically and stuff was Ryan Giggs.
Yeah. Who's Manchester United, still to date, is the most capped player, right? Well, he's the most appearances for the club. Nearly 900
he could
appearances.
Probably play for quite a few teams right now, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, certainly not that far away. But he was very much an early adopter of then was pretty crazy stuff, like yoga.
Yeah.
What, in football?
100%.
But he was kind of like, he had a little bit of that sort of, mindset kind of approach to things that could help him play better or a longer career.
Adapt as he got older, 100%. Yeah.
And so that started something off. Then, I got a call one day and so, it also involved me, Alex Ferguson started to get interested about what he was sleeping on.
Yeah.
Because he's like, a crazy AMer, as I call them, a morning type. He's up 4 o'clock in the morning. He's in the training ground at 5 o'clock before they've even opened up.
Yeah.
And put a lot of pressure on the whole system at Manchester United because he was just so
relentless,
wired and relentless, But that sort of sparked off a little relationship with him that sort of goes, let's look into this even further.
Yeah.
And he was very open to this sort of stuff. So, he wanted to double up pre-season training. It's a bit of a life journey, but I tell you what, it's so relevant today.
Yeah.
You mentioned I work with a lot of elite athletes, and we've got sleep coaches everywhere. We've got sleep science. We've got books coming out of our areas.
Yeah.
Absolutely all over the place. Back then, we didn't even know how to spell it.
Yeah.
We didn't even know what it meant or what it is. So it was sort of around that particular time. So, well, there was a new physio called Rob Swire who we got to know really well.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing, they go off on to play abroad.
Yeah.
And they'd fly back into Manchester Airport maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Correct.
Well, the players would drive home, but Rob would stay in the training ground and sleep on the couch. Because for him to go back home
Yeah.
and then come back
Yeah.
and to get prepared to start the recovery process for the players who were coming in, there was no time. So he would just curl it up on the couch. So I'm going, what are you doing that for? You know, I'll get you a folding bed.
Yeah. But that would relate a lot, Nick. I don't want to diverse because obviously you're going somewhere with this. Is a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners. You've just met one of my clients, for example. They're traveling overseas. They're getting in at airports at different times. They're on different time zones, and I suppose in a weird kind of way as well. It's no different to a parent who is getting woken up at 3 o'clock and then can't sleep for 4 hours. It's what you're trying to say. There was even at that club. You think you got so many resources. That physio is weighing up. Well, if I go home, I'm going to have no sleep. If I stay at the club, then at least I'm going to get a few hours.
I think the thing is what I've sort of moved on to, and you always have to sort of shift along because things are moving, crazy fast around us. Is you think about, it's a third of your life. Okay, I heard this. It's 30% of every day. It's really important. It's more time than anything else you do, probably apart from breathing, And that's how important it is, right? Well, why aren't we doing more about it? Why aren't we trying to get some gains from it? Take a few percentage points from that 30% we're allocating to it, because surely we should know better, and we should be able to bring that into our lives. And it was a little bit back then. Not that much has changed, Kirk. We suddenly, 1 minute now we're suddenly texting each other. Now we're taking pictures. Now we're doing this. Now I'm emailing. Now I'm doing that. Da, 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 da. And then suddenly they're playing not just Saturday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The training sessions are going nuts. They're starting to bring in nutritionists, da da da. And like you say, all the traveling. And that just kept going on and on and on and on. And all the different sports. It always is that you're just expected to be able to recover irrespective of what you ask that human being to do. And that still goes on today. And that's where a lot of the work I do can be focused on performance. But most of it is creating a platform for somebody to be able to redefine how they look at recovery in this sense, sleep. Forget about nocturnal sleep. And look at their behavior from the point of wake. Because there's a little bit like you wake up in the morning and who cares how you slept, right? You're still going to crack on with your day. You've still got things you've got to do. So whatever happened while you were asleep was in control. Your brain was in control of this, not you, right? So this is an activity when you're not awake, unlike exercise, eating, and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of like you've got to sort of help your brain. And to help your brain, you've got to get a better understanding of what's going on. So it's when I was in a clinic with a professor of sleep, and they would wire you up, frontal lobe, brainwave patterns, very unnatural set of circumstances in a clinic, all wired up, and they would be able to track all the brainwave patterns. And he would look at that in a 90-minute cycle. Some would look at 60. But a lot of the top scientists would look at a 90-minute cycle. So all these brainwave patterns appear during a 90 minutes. Then they benchmark it against the next one. So I'm in football, and their schedules are getting mad. Like, they're starting to get back at the training ground at 3 o'clock in the morning, then driving home. Then they've got a game here and like that. And it was like, well, why are they all wandering around with this 8-hour mindset and worrying about they're not going to get enough sleep before the next training day? Or they're creating things that shouldn't be out the way. So 90 minutes is the length of a football game. Don't laugh. There's a gap in the middle where you rehydrate, take some time out, refocus, change a few things. So it was kind of like, well, 5 90-minute cycles is 7.5 hours.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds about right to me. So let's redefine what 8 hours is. It's 5 90-minute cycles.
Yeah.
Now let's think about cycles. So let's also think about the first 2 cycles of anybody's sleep, where your brain goes hunting for this wonderful stuff called deep sleep.
Yeah.
And anybody can find this out. I don't need to go into the science of it. But there's only about 20% in any sleep period where your brain goes into this particular period. The rest of it is mucking about in lighter sleep stages. So while that's developing, it'll look for it. Anybody who's heard about sleep before 12 or just after 12, that's because as human beings, if we're synced to the natural circadian rhythms of our day, which is light, sunrise, midday, sunset, the 4 phases of the day, light exposure, that sort of thing, that's when your brain would naturally go into this phase and look for deep sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll reveal itself in the first 2 cycles. After that, they're wake cycles. Because let's say you've got a 5 90-minute cycle routine, and that could be between 11 and 6:30, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So 6:30 is your targeted start time, but mainly because of occupations for most. It's not a chosen one. So 5 90-minute cycles between 11 and 6:30. So your brain will look for deep sleep between 11 and 12:30. And then it'll go looking for it between 12:30 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Once you pass 2, they'll stop looking for it. So anybody who wears trackers and things like that will probably see within their trackers that deep sleep is lower than they'd expect it to be. They're trying to get it up to 50% or 100% because they know it's really good, but they don't quite understand that it's never going to get to that level. 20-25% is optimized. And why don't I get it at 4 o'clock in the morning? Well, because you won't. Because the sun went down here, it's gone like that, disappeared, it's going back to your postcode, and that's why it's 2 o'clock in the morning. That's why it's 3 o'clock in the morning, because it's simply moving to trigger the planet to wake, right? So it's kind of a great mindset to focus on, is to stop worrying about sleep, is what can you do from the point of wake, thinking in cycles. So anybody who knows me, you know me, but what it is create your anchor point, your reset point. Think about your chronotype.
So when you say your anchor point, what in layman's terms, what would that mean?
If you're we're both AMers, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll take the role as a PMer then.
Okay.
So you and I outside, all the time. The sun comes to the right, and so that triggers, because it's light and blue light in daylight. Is that triggers in a little gland in my brain called the pineal gland through my eyelids, light receptors. It starts to produce serotonin, which tells my brain to unsuppress everything and become active. Well, basically, that's happening with you straight away. With me, I'm probably 2 hours behind you, right?
As the PM here.
Yeah. So I've got this little phase delay, but that doesn't trigger, right? And you can see a lot more science around that, but let's keep it there, right?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of up. You're up. You've lit the fire, making breakfast, sorting out everything for the day, and then you kick me and goes, here's your coffee, right? And then I get out, we crack on, and then I'm starting to deteriorate early evening, other way around. So I cook dinner.
Yeah.
You pass out, I stay up a little bit, and off we go.
Yes.
Right. So, excuse me. So when you're looking at your anchor reset point, let's say mine, if I had complete control, and we were talking to your friend about islands, and me and you are on this island, okay?
Yeah.
And so I'd like to start my day 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. You, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6:30. You know what I mean? 8 o'clock's halfway through the day for you.
Yeah.
Whereas,
well, it can create a bit of anxiety, if I'm honest.
Yeah. It's like, well, hang on a minute. So what we do is there's the 24-hour clock.
Yep.
And, the sun rises at different times because we muck about with, clocks and things. It's another conversation. But basically, mine, let's say, is 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yours, let's say, is 6:30. Mhm. However, PMers live in an AMers world, not a PMers world.
Mm.
I think there's probably more PMers out there than AMers. Any group I've ever worked with, there's always like, it's almost like 70-30.
But because of people's lifestyles, whether it's through their business, their
Yeah,
career, or their kids, they've got
yeah,
to get. You'll say they're forced to be an aimer whether they like it or not.
yes.
Okay.
So let's say we've both got the same job, right? So we have to rise about, we need to be active by 6:30, shower, get on, travel to work, to be there for a particular time. So I know straight away that I'm waking up one full 90-minute cycle before I'd naturally wake up. You, however, are waking up at your natural chronotype wake time, but also your occupational wake time. So now we both know this. So the anchor reset point for both of us is 6:30. However, I need to do certain things slightly differently to you. And one is my exposure to light, because I need help, because you will rock into 8 o'clock, no problem at all. You'll be flying.
Even you're saying, because this is a thing again I want to unpack today, is even if I don't have that natural light, I'm going to be a little bit more forthright with my energy
Absolutely.
than you are.
Yeah. Because it's sort of a natural. So let's just say, even if you're in a dark room, a bedroom with blackout blinds and everything, it's that process, right? The light has shifted. You may not notice it, but the light has shifted, and the temperature shifts. So you're kind of really aware that it's probably light outside because of your natural instincts, where it's not the same for me. So it's really important in any part of your life is that you become more aware of this. And so you can set an anchor reset point of 6:30. If you think 90-minute cycles, to create some rhythm and pattern in your day, so be able to reboot, resync as you go through each cycle. You start to think about, what do I do in the first cycle? Cycle 1. What do I do in cycle 4? What do I do in cycle 8? You've got 16 90-minute cycles
throughout the day,
throughout your 24 hours. So you stop thinking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You start thinking 16 cycles, 24 hours a day. It happens all the time. All you do is make it harder. So trying to get into some sort of synchronize with it is start to think about it. So you can clearly identify what works for Kirk and what works for Nick in the first 90 minutes from our anchor point at 6:30. You then know that your 16th cycle of every day is your wake cycle between 5 and 6:30. Now, if it's, 5:45, 6 o'clock, 10 past 6, or you hit the alarm at 6:30, that's all right. But you start creeping closer to 5 and you're coming out too early. So you can start to reset yourself to get closer towards 6:30. So all you're doing is saying you start your day at 6:30. It's not about exactly when you wake, because all of this stuff is like consistent wake time, consistent sleep time. Hang on a minute. Life ain't like that.
Especially with people, because many people listening to this podcast, Nick, I've got kids. And
Exactly.
I know I've got some questions off.
Well, things happen, don't they?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, right, so me and you are deciding 6:30 is a good time to get to work.
Yeah.
It gives us a nice balanced time. But what definitely needs, I need a lamp by my bed, right, to hit me with that blue light.
You as the PMer.
Yeah, I need it, right?
Whereas I might not need it if I'm the AM.
Not so much. You still have it.
Yeah, cool.
But I know that waking up in a dark place, there's no light. So I've blackout blinds, I've got this, but I'm not creating sunrise. So you start to get a real relationship with sunrise times. So I'm going back into AMer again, Kirk. Okay?
Yeah.
So I actually look at sunrise times. How many people do? Right? I actually go, wow, my anchor point's 6:30. The sun's going to rise, 5:22. That's cool. Curtains open.
Yeah.
Just let it come in. Do it naturally.
Yes.
Now it's going a bit closer towards 4 or 4:30. Shut the curtains, put the lamp on, and recreate something that I can do. So you suddenly start getting a relationship. And me as a PM is probably going to skip breakfast I might grab a protein bar or have a drink, but I've not got that appetite going, you know.
Yeah.
Because I like breakfast after 8.
Yeah. So you're saying as a PM,
Not at 6:30.
don't try and fight that.
No, but if you get the light and you get that hit
Mm.
from a device, a tool, or be able to step outside, which is always key, then what happens is that does stimulate everything to be unsuppressed. So you can, don't laugh. But I got an athlete, a puppy dog, who was a chronic PMer, right?
Why?
You know the answer to that question, don't you? What does a puppy do? They start licking your face early morning. They want to go outside to empty their bowels. They want to go and have a wee. They need some food. They need a drink. They need some love. They need a walk. You cannot go to work and leave that dog on its own without doing those things. So immediately what happened is that athlete would wake up because the puppy was in control, dragging his emotion towards doing that. So he would get up. He would have a drink while he gave the dog a drink. He would walk the dog so he's outside, right? And when he came back, he started to chew on some protein bars that turned into some bowls of yogurt and fruit that turns into that turns into a bowel movement before he left the home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now he's feeding on the good stuff and not carrying on the waste, right? So his behavior shifted, and he now had so much value about the start of that day because it rattles on to the rest of his day. So, it's kind of getting to that particular place of you can listen to all the science and you can listen to everything that's going on, read about it like you pointed out. But how do you get it into your world? How can you redefine your approach and see what it is? And just like back in Manchester United, suddenly they started, Alex wanted pre-season training double up. So they train in the morning and the afternoon. Never done that before. So you train, have some lunch, buzz off, play golf. Now he's saying, we want to double it up because we want to hit the start of the season running, right? So they started getting data. Same amount of players in the morning, same amount of players in the afternoon. And the coaches are going, hang on a minute. What's going on here? There's subtle shifts. Maybe a sprint between, 80-meter sprint, or a little bit of, going through the cones and weaving in and out and standing jumps.
And then notice some players are sharper and some players are not so sharp.
Yeah, and you go, what's going on?
But they might have been in the morning.
Yeah. So suddenly you just go, well, you don't have to do too much science on this, but look at them getting out of the cars. Watch them in the changing room. That one's like not even here. He's going through the motions, but not here. The other one's flying around like mad. So we sort of go, well, hang on a minute. So we started to look at, what about all the coaches? The manager, AMer, off the charts, Alex Ferguson, He started his day at 4 o'clock in the morning, but was still there at 12 o'clock at night.
He's an AMer and a PM.
And he loved me because I said, well, we should bring, nap sessions in between training sessions. Is don't just let them hang around and play table tennis and eat. Let's get them in a room and use that recovery period, midday, siesta.
Yeah.
It's a natural recovery period. Use that. They might pass out and have a micro sleep, and then they'll go out and do better training in the afternoon. Whoa. He said, I actually do that, Nick.
So Alex said that.
Yeah, I just keep the door shut in my office, and nobody comes in my office unless, Lynn, my PA, lets them in.
Yeah.
Right? But not that 30 minutes. So that's why I'm still there at 12 o'clock.
Yeah. So
oh, I see. So he's suddenly like, hang on a minute.
So without realising it, was Sir Alex, the 90-minute cycles that you're referring to, without realising it, he was sort of he was sort of winging it.
Yeah.
By having his pit stop, as a sleep. But you're saying you don't necessarily. It doesn't have to be a sleep to have that energy recharge within these 90-minute cycles.
No.
To give the listeners some context, because that's what blew my mind is if you don't have a 7 or 8 hours sleep, and you can't have a nap because your lifestyle, your job doesn't facilitate that. What else can you do?
Well, it's just like instead of like using the word sleep, redefine it.
Yeah.
So now what we're talking about is 16 cycles, 16 90-minute cycles.
Mm.
And in each cycle, what are we doing? We're training, we're going to the gym. What about a little vacant mind space moment, right? Where we just release a little moment where Nick and Kirk can just look out of that window, you know? And we look out of that window and we sort of go, because the brain's visualizing that now, isn't it, Kirk? So it's processing what we're looking at. And so that creates calm, anxiety, stress, puts it in context. If we were sat outside, even better, you know? Sat by a window, even better with that light, you know? So there's such a lot you can go into.
Because
But the bit you mentioned before is all of these things. Most people are probably a lot closer to a defined approach to this than they imagine, right? Like that moment, it's sort of like, so are you saying, Nick, it's all right to nap? I said, well, Alex, I'm not going to tell the lads to nap. That's like snoozers for losers. They're young kids with no fear. What I'm actually going to do is call it a controlled recovery performance moment. To go faster, to be less injured, to be more alert, to make better decisions. Curl more free kicks in more often than not, you know? Oh, wow. And that 30-minute controlled recovery period where you might drop into a little micro recovery state. That's why you win games in the Alex Ferguson bit of any match, which is called plus 90 minutes.
Yeah, Fergie time. But what you
Because
say,
you're still there, still alert,
Yeah.
still keeping on top of it, still knowing it's only 1%. It's a little marginal gain, and if that just happens in a split second, wow.
yeah, and those 5 players that you said were the core players that were listening to what you were asking them to do.
Yeah.
It's no coincidence that they were the 50, at least 50% of the team
Uh-huh.
that went on to
England
push to
squad,
the last minute and
absolutely.
do. That was around the time that they won the treble, wasn't it? Coincidentally.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, so I'm not sort of going back to the Manchester United here, but this was sort of like over the last couple of decades and more, things have shifted quite dramatically. You know, I was wandering around as an international sales and marketing director. I was at Manchester United talking to the staff and everybody else. Nobody had a phone.
Yeah.
Nobody has social media. And I won't go into that, but just anybody just look back at what was around. So there was a lot of recovery moments for that generation, including me, because I could make as many notes as possible on my notepad with a pencil, but I couldn't do anything with them. They just on the pad. I had to get somewhere else and process it. So there was lots of moments where you just had moments of reflection, to look at the sky, to look at this, to do nothing, just to have, you know, waiting for something like a taxi or a train or a plane, or just sitting in a room, you know, waiting to go out for training.
That's still emotional space.
Yeah, and you see you know, it's sort of weird talking about it because everybody talks about it now. But I tell you what, I think I would always provide a little bit of caution, is that there's no isolated solutions to this. What you have to do is bring those ingredients together. You know, a bit like my sort of techniques, have a framework that you can actually put little things in that mean something to Kirk, and be able to adapt and manipulate other things that are very apparent in your life now. But I tell you what, once you start to look for a 20-minute period, say late afternoon, which is the other recovery period apart from midday, when you start to look for that, and it might appear once a week, then it appears twice a week, then it appears 3 times a week, and then it becomes the most important 30 to 20 minutes of your day, because it makes you more productive
Afterwards.
Yes, it takes all the pressure off trying to sleep for long periods of time. It deals with travel, jet lag. It deals with everything, because what you become is a polyphasic sleeper. And a polyphasic sleeper was what all humans did pre-electric light, which is 1930s, when it hit the streets big time. And pre-electric light, you and I, Kirk, were completely synced to sunrise, midday, sunset, rolling 24 hours. So our reactions to serotonin and blue light was very apparent in the first 2 phases of the day. We spent more time outside than inside. we would be very much influenced by the melatonin phase of the day, because that 12-hour clock, which is the third phase of your day, sort of like 6 into 12.
Yeah.
We would sleep in shorter periods. Maybe, anybody listening to this, sorry, I don't speak sleep science, but that's not why I create elite athletes, to make a difference when they have to.
Yeah.
And deal with all these things. Is a lot of people wake up and you always look at the clock, because you wake up and think, oh, it might be time to get up. But you look at the clock, and how many people look at that clock and it's probably somewhere between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Right? And they worry about it then and try and get back to sleep and don't know what to do. Pre-electric light, we would sleep, before 12 and after 12, maybe 2 90-minute cycles, right? 3 hours, maybe 3, 4.5, right? And so you'd wake around 2 o'clock and become active, right? So it's a natural point to be awake. Just because it's dark, your circadian rhythm, you're getting ready to go hunting.
Yeah, because
catch the animals.
Do
you know what I mean?
You're not going to get deep sleep whether you wear 2-eyed masks at that point anyway.
It doesn't reveal itself
but
after the first
what you're saying, the everyday person, I know I've certainly done this, Nick, is because of the awareness of sleep, it can create so much stress and this expectation. And I've said this myself on podcasts as a novice when it comes to sleep, hence why you're on. I begged you to come on here today. It's the expectation of the generic information about sleep 7 to 8 hours that can create the anxiety that can affect your sleep and your energy management for the rest of the day anyway.
Oh God, and we got these things, haven't we, everywhere, right? Little trackers all over the place, which is great. If you can't measure anything in sport, you probably don't do it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you jump from no knowledge, no education at any level, and then you jump into this health pillar and you start tracking it, then suddenly that already has a medical term called orthosomnia, for the increased anxiety and stress that's created by not really knowing what to do with the information it's giving you, or how to adjust it, or what does it mean, because sleep is not a performance criteria yet. It's certainly, how you feel, good sleep, bad sleep, but it will never get in the way of anything you want to do. Right? When you look at life, so
you're gonna keep moving forward anyway.
You've got to, you sort of, can't,
especially when you got kids and work.
I can't take the kids to school. And by the way, there's a plane load of people who want to go on holiday. I ain't flying, right? Or that surgeon.
Yeah.
You might think, I hope he slept well last night, or she, but at the end of the day, still do the operation.
They've got to show up,
because I'm dying here.
Yeah.
I need that doing, right? So however you've slept, I don't care. Do the operation.
So don't try and fight it, because you're going to do what you need to do anyway.
Absolutely.
And you can create so much more stress, and that's probably going to impact your mood doing these things as well. If you're going, you've got an emotional dependence on, I need to do that perfect 7 hours sleep to perform at my best. All of a sudden you've got, that creates an even deeper and emotional anchor to that as well.
I just sort of, I started working with a around the world sailor, and 3 months at sea on their own. They're racing, but they can't see anybody. The circumstance of being able to go down below and grab some recovery, which you're in a seat that's put straps on, because the boat can be all over the place. You've got an alarm on that will only last, so it'll last between the point you sit in, you hit it, 30 minutes, you've got to go back up on deck. You can only go down if all of these factors are in place. Otherwise, it's too dangerous. So it's kind of like the polyphasic sleep approach, which is quite natural to us. They would use a multiphasic sleep approach, and that would be recovery 6 times a day in any 24 hours. Right? There's the biphasic, which is twice a day, which is just siesta, midday. Triphasic is midday and late afternoon. So with a little bit of knowledge, when you ever get involved with somebody, they go, oh, that graveyard slot in business straight after lunch. Never do a podcast with Nick and Kirk straight after lunch, because Nick and Kirk will be like wandering off into, I'm not quite here, Kirk. What did you say? What did you? I've lost my thread now, and I'm waffling like I am now. So it's kind of like, wow. So what you really start to do is really find things that, when you're wandering around you're always looking for the benefits of that massive thing called light to keep the balance of hormones in place. So what I mean is every 90-minute cycle, what are you doing that will help your brain go through these cycles so that when you present yourself to go into a recovery state, it'll just do it? Because you and I know it may not have happened to you. It's certainly happened to me when I've done a microsleep behind the wheel of a car on a motorway. Tiredness can kill, take a break, right? And lorry drivers, just a little nod. And you go, what is that? You know? So if you have a process, I don't even have to be tired. My brain knows that I allocate that time. It's not specific, it's just in that window. Right? So some days it'll be 4 to 4:30, some days 4:30 to 5. Do you know what I mean? It'll always be there. And sometimes it might only be 20 minutes or 15 minutes, not a full 30, because I'm not in control of everything. But it always happens. And because it's there, my brain goes, thanks very much, bang. And it'll give you a little nod. Go, you're probably going to go into a microsleep, Nick. So I might just be very aware of that and just sit somewhere a little bit more secure. Or, but hang on, I've fallen asleep on so many trains, Kirk, with all my personal belongings. I conk out. There I am drooling, snoring in public. I don't know anybody on the train because I've just gone. So it's sort of like, well, why can't I do it in the middle of a square in London? You see the tennis players on a court, towel over their head. What are they doing? Protecting themselves from the sun. Just go out. I've been into offices and corporates and everything else, and you look at everybody and think, they're all working away at their desks in front of their computers.
Are they?
I said, well, all the PMers are sat by the window desks in the afternoon.
Okay.
Because we're hot desking,
Okay.
And all the AMers,
Yes.
So they go for the light. And so we put lamps over this side because we can't do that, but we're aware of it. So we change the lighting. So we're helping people. And we're doing this. And by the way, you see all the staff there in the office and they're all beavering away, aren't they, looking at their computers? Well, 50% of them are in CRP window.
Which is?
Because they're looking at something on their computer visually, like coastlines or whatever. They're listening to things in their ears, which could be binaural beats, it could be comforting sounds, it could be, podcast that's nice and relaxing, could be anything, right? And they're just taking 20, right? So I can have a CRP with you.
For those, again, who haven't got a clue what CRP is, what is that?
Controlled recovery period. It's the other word I use for napping.
Yeah, so if people can't nap, you're saying a better way to frame it rather than sleep is a controlled recovery period.
Oh, God, you've got napsicise classes in gyms. You pay to go into a gym and lie on a bed and nap it out. I mean, what the heck? Companies build recovery rooms. I go, what are you doing now? I was with an NHL hockey team and all the players are on the floor, with their backpacks and everything else, just whacking out a 20-minute period, not even trying to go to sleep before they get on the court, knowing that that's part of the process. So what you do is you just go, that's how my recovery reveals itself. And suddenly you start to stop worrying about sleep because you're creating these moments. They are really important to you. How much time do we actually waste every day, Kirk?
Yeah, people probably scroll. If you brain a couple of these 90-minute cycles, and we've probably got some entrepreneurs listening to this, and this is speaking about myself sometimes, so there's no judgment. Or is people going, oh, I haven't got time to do this.
No.
Come on, have a look at your phone and have a look at how many times you stop for 5 to 10 minutes to WhatsApp, to email, to look on social media. You've got the time, and is that a controlled recovery period? Because you're going to find a way to utilize that time that you're talking about either way.
And we love it, don't we? So there's what you sort of think is there's little micro recovery moments, like just a couple of minutes, So if you've got you're wandering around with this 2-litre hydration bottle, even my daughter's got one now, or you sort of think, well, if I half fill my hydration bottle with whatever's in it.
Mm.
Then I sort of drink some of it, and then I need to go and refill it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that might be standing somebody where there's some light, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a little moment, isn't it? It's just a little distractive little moment, and the power of those. So suddenly you start to think, if you were on a 5 cycle routine, best 5 a day,
Yeah.
make sleep your first health pillar, so that everything else you do gets optimized, not diminished,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how you create champions,
Yeah.
Olympic athletes. A mindset of an elite athlete is to change it and put your recovery at least at the same level, if not higher than everything else.
Because I saw something the other day, Nick, and it really made me not stand up. I was sitting down when I was watching it, but it was a social media video by, I think it was a UFC fighter potentially,
Yeah.
but he said, and it really hit home. Everyone trains hard. You think you're the only person training hard, but you're not. It's the people who are prepared to do the stuff outside of training that make the difference. So if you look at every Premiership footballer just now, and you can elaborate on the teams you work with, right? 'Cause you work with Man City, Arsenal, England, Real Madrid, all these different things. All of them, right? Would you agree? A majority are training very hard. They look after themselves. Okay. The large part of the difference is who pays attention to the stuff outside of the training hard and that time
The biggest
pace.
percentage of their day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's far more relevant now. But once you get to that particular point of your mental and physical activities and your mental and physical recovery activities are one in the same. Create rhythm, create pattern, try to resync yourself with something that is not going to change. If it does, we won't be around. And that's you're a human on a planet and the sun goes around. It creates internal circadian rhythms, internal clocks. It creates everything about functionality. You can see so much now these days through podcasts like this and documentaries everywhere, Limitless, Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, what's going on? Well, you're not just asleep. Come on. Your brain needs the opportunity to replenish, rejuvenate, reboot. And if you're thinking about that from the moment so it's a reset point. It's an anchor point. It's a bit like in the military. If you see something really bad or you're involved with something really bad, you do a 180 on it. You leave it in the wall, as they say, right? When I've done some work with the Marines, they just leave it in the wall. Now come away. It doesn't really go away, but you've got to put it somewhere to block it out. So you sort of, there you are. You wake up. It's just about 6 o'clock in Kirk's world. Anchor point 6:30. So you just wake up nice and relaxed, and you sort of go, right, well, I can start to think about hydration, breakfast, light, and stuff like that. So there's my first cycle into 8 o'clock. Now, what am I doing? I need some mental challenges. I need light. I need to trigger those natural functions because I've effectively asked my brain to put me asleep for many hours. So I've got to come out of that. So the first 90 minutes is coming into the world. And the second 90 minutes, you're going to do this for 60 minutes. Well, give me 2 minutes. Give me a little micro moment. You're going to do that give me that. Right. Next cycle. Then you hit cycle 4 or 5 and you go midday point. Take on some food. It's the slump period. Have 15 maybe. Then you hit late afternoon and you think, take it there. So you can start to balance. So what you start to do is go, let's just say 7.5 hours is this 8-hour myth. Well, let's not run away from that. It's 30% of 24. Let's not go completely against the science, but how many people actually get it? So in your life, you could be thinking, this is your chronotype. This is when you'd naturally like to wake. It means you can be quite productive at 12 o'clock at night, never worrying. You might want to be able to, so I can get something. When we first sat down with a coach and just here's our athlete, Kirk. And what we're doing is we're going for 35 cycles in 7 days, right? And that's 5 cycles a day. But it's not 5 cycles in one block nocturnally. To be able for us to put Kirk into this itinerary, of how these weeks look. We're going to go 6:30, which also is his natural chronotype. We're going to go 11 into 6:30 is his 5 90-minute cycles.
Mm-hmm.
However, we've got flights. However, we've got other things going on and late night games. So there's no way he's going to get to 11. And the last thing we want him doing is getting in at 20 past 11, rushing upstairs and jumping into bed because he's missing a cycle.
He's going to be wired as well.
So what we're going to do is put him on 12:30 into 6:30. That's 4 cycles in 6 hours. We're going to take the pressure off phase 3. It means most of the things are not going to get in the way of it. 6:30 works most of the time. And because he's an AMer, we're not going to look at midday. We'll look at late afternoon because that's the AMer's window in a triphasic way. That's his biphasic approach. So 4 cycles, 12:30 into 6:30, 30-minute cycle there because that's 30% of 90 minutes. Okay. Bang. Do that every day. Brain goes, love it. Brain goes, love it. You know, he's learning to play the guitar in that window sometimes. Sometimes he has a pulse of sleep, but does it all the time. That's part of that. Take the pressure off phase 3. Now he's not rushing around like a nutter. He wants to eat good food and cook it from scratch. He wants to go to he can go to the gym at 9:30 or go swimming. He can eat because he's not putting himself under pressure to get to bed and get his 8 hours. He's got this lovely routine going on. And if he keeps doing this, the amount of times we'll just look at it and go, right, it's actually 28 back-to-back nocturnal cycles with 7 midpoint cycles of 30 minutes supported by 42 micro moments.
Yeah.
Wow. So how does that week look for Kirk? He'll do it, but he's not going to get back in till 2 o'clock in the morning on the Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, that's all right. We'll just forget that. He'll get in at 2, whether he goes to sleep or not, take the pressure off it. Starts his day at 6:30.
So you still got the same time? Because I know this is a really common question.
Forget it, because you're already, you know, when you get back home and it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, then, you know, get in the sauna, get in the ice bath, or do something. Don't try and go to sleep because you're just going to go into it. It's a bit like most people understand. If you don't look at your napping, hate the word, you see up it. If you don't think about that and take it in a really positive way, then most people feel sluggish if they just do it every now and again. And maybe that turns into an hour or 2 hours. Athletes go home at lunchtime and then fall asleep on the sofa and get 2 or 3 hours in because they're not controlling it. So it's a bit like when you start to look at it like that, it becomes enormously powerful. And you're not trying to sleep. So we would just look at that and go, it's all right. Right? Because all we'll do is release another little 20 minutes midday on the day before. So he'll get one there, get his normal one there, not even putting any pressure on it. He'll come back at 2 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah.
But we'll see about that. Comes back absolutely wired. You know, whether it's good or bad, you're always going to be wired.
Yeah.
Can't go to sleep. Don't start taking tablets. Don't start taking melatonin. Don't try and force yourself to sleep. Do a nice recovery thing. Watch a David Attenborough film. Go for a walk. Be awake. Start your day at 6:30. Go through your first cycle into your second cycle. And we'll just release you another 20 minutes the following 24 hours.
Yeah.
There, and then you're back on again. So it really tries to create something that works more often than not. It puts a bit of focus on it, and it really starts putting your focus on what makes Kirk work, because I can guarantee to anybody, and it's proven, that if you want to be more productive, more effective, be a person that you probably can't see right now. Right? I think we're all aware of that. I certainly am.
Yeah.
I think that pandemic period sort of made me reflect on a lot of things, and I've listened to a lot of science, and it's sort of like, wow. I remember. Have we got time?
No. We're good for time. I've got a few questions I want to chop through for some of my clients.
Well, I just remember because I recently went back to an area where I used to go on holiday as a young kid with my family. Right?
Yeah,
and we were camping in a field by the coastline in a little cove, and every day for 6 weeks, I was in the cold sea out in the warm weather sometimes, all day long.
Mm.
I was climbing. So I was using completely different muscle groups. So you got cardio, you got everything, you got that, you got the cold water, the warm, you got this, absolutely fascinating. And when you listen to anybody talking today, is just how far away are you in your everyday life to, you can't be outside all the time. You can't have all of these things. Nobody can have a sauna and a cold room at home or
No.
whatever. Is that whatever it is just reflect on how far away are you? Because I've had lots of experiences. I know it's something you're focused on. When I've sent people off, you know, into the mountains for 3 or 4 days or a week, and it's not about leaving all the tech behind and all this sort of stuff, but it doesn't take too much. They would most reflect that within about 48 hours is their HRVs creeping. Their sort of well-being space is sort of their habits, their behaviors start changing. Their sort of recovery periods are almost around them all the time. You know, build the fire, look at the lake, eat the food, look at the trees, go for a swim. And I think anybody, if you haven't done it, then take some time out, go and explore your natural chronotype. Don't treat it as a waste of time, but I can guarantee you'll come back from it and you will then be able to reflect very, very clearly with just how far you are away from that sort of ideal. And if you can regain your balance and create, then you can, if you go down a bit too much here, see what you can do to bring it back up again. So there's no sort of perfect scenario in this. There's always lots of variables. So it can swing a bit as you're going through any period of time, but you know how to regain your balance.
Because I think that's half the problem, Nick, is people create it's trying to chase perfection when they're probably not that in. They're not as in a bad place as what they thought. It's just there's such an unrealistic expectation, and there's like I say, there's so many supplements out there now, so many apps, and so much marketing in relation to these products and services. I've got some quick fire questions, mate. I mean, as I said, I could speak to you mate all day. I've got some questions before we wrap up. If I could just chop through these, just because some of the clients.
Well, I'll try and answer.
We've probably answered some of these anyway. First question from the guys: how important is a consistent sleep schedule? I think you've covered that already. But what would you say the number one thing is if people are trying to go right? What is the one thing if I'm trying to think of a sleep schedule routine? What is the one thing, the most important thing?
Try not to use the word routines and schedules, right? What he's asking is when you get told you need a consistent bedtime and a consistent wake time. Okay, well, that isn't what I do. Is what we just explained is get your anchor point, which is your most consistent wake time in any particular period. Fix that, chop your day up into 90-minute cycles. That gives you sleep times. So 5 90-minute cycles would be 11 into 6:30. But I've also got 12:30 into 6:30. I've also got 2 a.m. into 6:30, right? So what I'm doing is I'm using those timings to keep rhythm and consistency and pattern to what I'm doing, but I can adopt a different sleep time to take the pressure off thinking I've got to be asleep to get my 8 hours at 10 o'clock, when actually I'm outside riding my bike, it's summer, and I'm with Kirk having a lot of fun, and it's 10 o'clock at night, but I should be at home sleeping to get that. No, I've just chosen 12:30 because I want to go bike riding with you.
Yeah.
And I'm not losing out. So it's like it's more like a sleep rhythm.
Yeah.
It's a recovery rhythm that has more consistency than anybody who tries to go to sleep at the same time every night, because they'll never do it.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. There's only a couple. I promise. How to maximize sleep quality? More sleep. We've covered that. Well, you've covered that as well. Our wake up window's a gimmick. I think you've covered that. It's certainly not. This is a common one related to any people with children. We're just about to have a third child, so sleep pretty much goes out the window for a good while. Any recommendations or advice on how we maximise what little sleep we will be getting? I think again you've covered that, is especially if you've got kids.
It's one of those things, because I've done it. Yes, they're in the third child, but at the end of the day, your children come in sleeping polyphasically.
Yeah.
as we spoke about before, right? Their brain is in control of their sleeping habits, right? And as you go through the formative years, it changes. And parents try to get kids to get into a monophasic approach, not for the benefit of the kid, for the benefit of their social life, right? So if you've already been using a polyphasic approach, right,
Mm.
the kid comes along, it just slides into your life. And as the kid goes through the formative growth years, you start all sitting down and having 30 minutes in the afternoon or whatever. So it kind of stays with you. So all they need to do is, if they just redefine how they're going through their lives, and then that will work inside of how these kids are all interacting, I assume at different ages,
Yeah.
because that's how it shifts. But you really, like, trying to sleep with your kids
Mm.
sometimes doesn't work, because you got to do the washing and get the shopping done and all that sort of stuff, doesn't it? So it's kind of like you need to adopt a multiphasic sleep approach, which is natural.
Mm.
So you're grabbing little short moments
Mm-hmm.
all the way through those 24 hours with the confidence that you're getting a level of recovery and doing other things that will make you go through it. And that's how you adopt it. And if you'd been aware of that in the first place, it wouldn't be a shock.
Yeah. Again, it comes down to the expectation, isn't it, of this golden 7 or 8 hours? But that is just universally isn't possible. But my client there, Scott, who's asked that question, probably wouldn't be stressing about that if he'd have
Uh-huh.
been aware of the approach of having these little pit
Yeah,
stops.
like if I took Scott on a round the world sailing trip, I
Yeah.
said the only way we're going to get through this for 3 months, mate, is if we adopt a multiphasic approach. He does it, he comes back and never goes back, because he absolutely smashed it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He went round the world on a boat and smashed it for 3 months. And he goes, "You want me to go and sleep 8 hours a night in one block? Forget that."
Okay. Last one. How? I mean, again, this is a generic thing, so we can squash this if needed. But how to maximize sleep efficiency quality during mental and physical burnout. So this is really going to be really common for any entrepreneurs or anyone who's got a lot on, whether you're a business owner or you're just in a high pressure job. And this is very common inside Built to Last. And I feel there's a deeper challenges here. Is I feel that with constant exhaustion, I'm sleeping excessively and never rested.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've maximizing sleep efficiency. I feel constant
What?
exhaustion. I'm sleeping excessively, never rested.
Yeah, yeah.
With that,
It's the simplistic way to look at it, right? Is if you create rhythm of cycles,
yeah,
of what you do in every cycle, how you're helping your brain while you're awake. You're out of control when you go into a sleep state. Then you focus that what your brain wants to do is look for that deep sleep in the first two cycles, whether it's between 12:30 and 2, 11 or 12:30, da da da. That's when it is. It loses itself there. You then go back to, what are you doing every day that's helping your brain? It'll keep adapting. It'll constantly keep adapting, but we know the consequences. So yes, everybody's busy. So what happens is, when it's a bit like being at the top of the stairs, Kirk, right?
mm-hmm.
If you live in an apartment, you know what I mean. At the top of the stairs, when you present yourself to sleep and the brain takes over, as you wander down this deep sleep stuff at the bottom, which is only going to be about 20% of any amount of sleep,
Yep.
that's where your brain wants to go in, shut you down completely, come back up and have another little go in the first two cycles. On the way down, in the lighter sleep stages, it's trying to develop this process. Is if it's not comfortable. I mean, I can come in your bedroom and play with your hair in deep sleep, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anybody's got kids, look at their kids. Can't get anything out of them. Is as you wander down, anything, if you haven't created some space in that phase 3 period to shift into that melatonin world, to suppress things, to create time, to do things in an unrushed way, then all your brain will do is wander halfway down the stairs, go back up again, halfway down the stairs, go up. So you will wake up in the morning and you may have been asleep for quite a long period of time, but you ain't been down the bottom. So pointless, right? Females suffer from this even more than males, as female sporters come more into the fray. And well done the girls whenever this goes out.
Yeah.
But they have that nurturing tendency, whether they like kids or not. So they're more alert, more sensitive, more aware, right? So they are likely to stay in deep sleep, light sleep stages, right? Because they react to things. So when they go into a sleep state, they're likely to go into deep sleep quite quickly, come out of it, and then stay alert. So you want to think that if you're pushing the boundaries, if you're really pushing the boundaries,
Yeah.
think polyphasically, take the pressure off, um, understand it's while you're pushing the boundaries,
Yeah.
is really think about, have you done anything in the last 90 minutes in cycle 2, 3, 4, 5? Have you done anything at all to help your brain?
To have a little pit stop and
Anything
yeah,
at all.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
if you haven't, then you're going to crash and burn.
No matter who you are, and there's no magic here.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
100%.
We know this happens, doesn't it, Kirk?
Yeah.
We experience it ourselves. You get to a particular point, it may look great on the outside.
You think you're invincible.
I've got friends who
Yeah.
are absolutely smashing it.
Mhm.
Absolutely smashing it. Inside, dying. And they just stop. And anybody, that's going to come your way. And forget about sleep, but it's creating this different mindset to what recovery and sleep means. And when you change that, you stop worrying about it. And it's an amazing thing, I have to say. I get quite passionate about this now.
No, I can see
because
that.
I know so many people across the decades, and even more so today, in all walks of life, whoever it is, who come knocking on my door. And I try to focus on sport, but, I wrote a book, and that's dangerous because everybody can read it. So it is really about everybody. I love the fact that the younger generation are knocking on my door because they see this as a really key tool to get advantage of.
They don't have to wait till they're 40 and 50.
Well, no, they want to get hold of this.
I get it.
Yeah.
100%. And just a couple of obvious ones, quick ones. Caffeine. What's your thoughts on caffeine shut-off time? I know these are very generic, but I know there's so many different things.
It's like a lot of things that come along. I mean, caffeine in general terms, the health authorities say that 300 milligrams is sort of okay. In a lot of sports, in a lot of environments in life, it's just a social drink. If I'm coaching people in Spain, they can't talk to you without one. You know what I mean, or Italy. But it's kind of like, it's a bit like a glass of wine. It's like a beer. It's like a donut every now and again. It puts a smile on your face, but don't do it every day.
Yeah.
You might be into some sort of dietary program. I'm doing quite a lot of intermittent fasting because it really sort of suits me. I feel great sort of just eating twice a day and how plant-based that is, but I'm not crazy about it because we've got a great donut shop across the road. It's nice to have one, sometimes. I think what you do is it's all about, if you do have caffeine in your world for whatever reason, know the content of it, keep a steady flow at a reasonable level, and don't do the highs and the lows, or not at all. Or if you do use it, be aware of its half-life and manage it well, because you put something into the body and you start doing that, like melatonin supplements, all sorts of things, tablets, anything you're doing that you're basically taking orally, is if you start to become dependent on that, then it becomes a problem. So it wants to feel a bit like a treat, a little uplift, to help going into a meeting, or it's a little bit of cold water can do that for you, can't it?
Or like a couple of, like an espresso before a workout. But what I love about you, Nick, and I suppose this is like the take-home message, is don't make it a bigger deal than what it is, and be aware of you. Be aware of how you're feeling. Be more in control of
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like, I'm in that older generation, but there's quite a lot of things, Kirk, that you and I have gone through, and we were told they were either good for us or bad for us.
Yeah.
And the thought process has changed.
Yeah.
Quite significantly about that,
Yeah.
So now you can overhydrate, where before we weren't even hydrating, so there's lots of little things that you sort of have to reflect on to say, well, if a really good Rioja glass of with Kirk,
Gabby loves that, by the way,
sat there, because we had this. I've been doing some work with a big organisation, and they've got trackers on everything else, and they look at their sleep stuff, but they don't take too much notice of the HRV, which I think for most people we would accept is some sort of recovery measure and stress and things like that. So this tracker picks up the fact that at that particular time, when this chief constable sitting on his veranda in the Lake District, works in Manchester, he's having a glass of Rioja with his partner, they wouldn't have gone and sat on the veranda and said, let's go and have a chat. It's sort of like, let's go and have a glass of wine. I've got a nice Rioja, and we'll sit down and have a chat and look at the view. HRV, up it's going. You say like, aha. Now 2, no. Now 3, no. Right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, that's a controlled recovery period at certain points in certain ways. It's does that trigger it? Is it the view? Is it the nice, pleasant social conversation with another human who you trust?
Yeah.
Because it's amazing if you think of recovery as, I trust my closest friends, my partner, my family members. I trust them. They can influence my life, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Beyond that, too much intrusion.
Yeah.
Too much intrusion. So I need to manage that intrusion and deal with the fact that actually sitting with my daughter, who's in her mid-30s, and having a glass of Prosecco, looking at the kids playing in the garden, and just being able to talk to each other. Are you all right? No. If that's doing me good inside, and I can even see it on something that's really creating a nice balance, then, are you going to tell me not to do that? So the caffeine question is, I think most people I come across, there's a few people at the extremes, aren't there? But in general terms, it's all about healthy, balanced approach to everything you do, and any extremes, whatever that is, whatever your parameters are for doing that, probably have short and long-term consequences, don't we? But I think it's a lovely place to get to when you stop worrying about sleep. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And lastly, because I know so many people have whoops and auras, right? I have to ask you
and
on
all
this,
good other
right?
trackers.
Yeah, all these different trackers, right? There's whoops, there's auras, there's all these different things that. I use the app Sleep Cycle, and I've been hammered about that. Just last question: what is your thoughts on this? On all these different? Are they a benefit? Are they a positive or are they negative? And how? Because I know some people get obsessed with them.
I think the best way to look at it is not to go, it's a thing about technology that's coming along, and that's fine. There it is. What you do need to do is raise your awareness about this subject, sleep, wherever you get that from. Try to put that into some contents like listening to us speak and anybody else. And then you can have a bit more of a perspective. So what you do is, in elite sport, we don't use that. Well, in my world, we don't use that as a performance criteria or a tracker or anything like that. What we'll do is you go through a week, and this is on your wrist. Right? Don't look at it. Right? Just let it build the data, and then sit down, maybe with a glass of Prosecco, with a nice open mind, looking at the woods or the trees or your garden, and just look at the data and go, now you've got this sort of, well, this is what went on in my week, and how much does it correlate to how that week looked like? You want to look at that when you've got an illness, when you're not going to work, or when you've got something happening that's unusual. So you try to create some data points. So we don't look at all the data points. We just look at certain things. And predominantly, if your sleep score says that you've gone down a few points, so you didn't sleep as well you did the other, keep your eye on your HRV, right? Because you can, I've got a strap on at the moment, but that's because I'm testing it for somebody else. So I won't mention the name, but it's like, it'll tell me I had a sleep score of 100, but my HRV was 22. Now, anybody who knows about that sort of goes, well, you weren't recovering while you were asleep. So where's that coming from? So I think the general perspective is, raise your awareness of what this data is producing for you. Try to have a technique in your back pocket that allows you maybe to take that information and bring it into your world, because I know for a fact, because they are talking to me now, that a number of these trackers and a number of these apps are now realizing that, yes, they've sold a lot of them, but once they've sold enough
Mm.
to the people who would buy them, they're not on repeat, because most people are moving them into the cupboard. And that's a little bit dangerous, I think, for us all. But that's really where it goes. I would love you to be able to have a really natural technique, so I can look at my data and go, well, that worked for me. You know, I had a glass of prosecco with my wife, and I got some good sleep data. Then I didn't do that, and the sleep data changed, or it didn't change. Well, what's make its mind up?
Mm.
So what I'm doing is go, this is what works for me. This is what I do in my first 90 minutes. This is what I do in cycle 8. This is what I do there. That's what I do there. And I do 4 cycles, 6 hours. So I've got less chance to wake up and go to the toilet, because I've been able to get bowel and bladder in place and thoughts and things out the way with unrushed manner.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing, isn't it? You know, I don't need whale noises or banana, I don't need this stuff for me to go into a sleep state. And I'm more active in the evenings. I've learned to play the guitar again, because I'm not trying to create some space. And that's really how you get people out of an addictive behavior.
Yeah.
Because as you know, there's no point me telling you how much sleep is important. Scaring the crap out of you with the science, that you're going to get all of these things go wrong if you don't get your 8 hours. If you only get 6, that's it, forget it. So in that space, what we do as coaches, if I can put myself in that bracket, is don't tell somebody what to do, just take them on a journey. And on that journey, they end up there. And suddenly they turn around and go, wow, I never knew this could happen. And it didn't take long, did it? I'm not going to turn back, because this is amazing. Because I now feel amazing. And my sessions in the gym, I also do stuff at home and outside, I've got a medicine ball and I put it in the garden, so I chuck it around a bit. So I'm not always focused on training just inside. I'm da 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 and da 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 and da 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 da, and I seem to be cooking from scratch and more healthier more often. And
they're just as beneficial as stressing about that.
And I really feel like every now and again, like I just did, is it just I'm just enjoying not saying anything for a minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, where did that come from? Yeah. And it's like, whoa.
But we're all constantly trying to fill this space. I've got to do something. I've got to do something. I've got to do something. I've got to do something.
Yeah.
I'm terrible for it.
Yeah, but it isn't it? But it's difficult to. But I think it's a bit like once somebody gets you to do a 60-minute session in the gym that you do all the time, and this is the data you get out of it, and then they just go, well, we'll take 5 minutes out before we do it, and just do 55, and you go, okay, we'll break it a bit. We're over repping. We're just pushing, and suddenly, that bar suddenly just pops up, and you go, where did that come from? Because I've actually been doing things slightly different, because I just sat in the changing room in the gym.
You actually got your energy.
I actually sat down in the gym, in the corner. There I am. Just chucked the towel over my head. Nobody gives a damn what I'm doing. And I just took that bit out, created that little vacant mind space, just was be able to visualize something that just made me feel, I'm looking forward to that moment tonight when I get back. Just a little bit more like that. And then you come in and you do your routine, and suddenly numbers start to come out that you would never experience. So you're actually doing less and more happens. When you ever get to that space, you never go back.
Yeah. Awesome. Nick, mate, I could literally talk to you for days and days and days. I'll have to drag you back on. Mate, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure. We didn't fall asleep, did we?
No. Nick,
we got through the slump.
No, not at all. For me, the big takeaway, the way you look at things is so different. It really is. It's just it's trying to work with people's lifestyles and work with people's professional careers rather than just trying to fit. What was it, square pegs in round holes?
Right.
The statement is. But where can people find your social media, your website, your books? Because I know you've had some best-selling books too that I think will really
Yeah, I
help
mean,
people.
I sit under the title of sportsleepcoach.com, sport with no S. Um, so there you can access, everything I do really. I don't do much, but I produce a lot of content. I, write stuff. You can get one-to-one coaching, or you can get an Audible course. Like you said, I got asked to write a book 2016 with Penguin Random House, and it's in over 18 languages now
Yeah.
all over the world. Quite weird to read my journey in a book about sleep in Japanese and Chinese and Arabic. Quite bizarre. But it's I think anybody listening to this and go, well, I sleep really well. Well, tell you what, call me. Call me and Kirk and tell us how you do it. Because I've never met anybody who says they sleep well and can tell me how they do it. They just go, I don't know, it just happens. But I think just take some little baby steps. If it's, I would avoid diving into the science of sleep too early on,
No one cares really, do they? Let's be
because
honest.
it is valuable
Yeah.
to get that knowledge and everything else, but it'll probably stop you doing anything. That would be my judgment.
It can
So
overcomplicate things before you
yeah,
start to.
I'd jump in and go and start at least with some of the things we've been talking about today, at least reading that book or something similar, at least trying to think of, ah, loads of people, they read my book called Sleep. It's got a power button on it. They wanted to put a nice couple with their legs under the duvets, or some sheep, or some stars in the sky, classic sleep book stuff, or a don't disturb sign on a hotel door,
Mm.
And I went, get lost. This is not what this book's about. And most people read it and go, the fascinating thing about your book, Nick, is actually, I think I knew everything that was in there. That's the impression I get. Because, wow. So it's just like, I read your book and I'm an AMer. I'm an AMer. I always knew I was an AMer. Why haven't I done anything about that? I don't know. I actually, what? I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I actually like to have a little sit on a chair and take a bit of time out and do that on my days off.
I like to breathe.
Why don't I
I
do
like
that
to
every day?
meditate. I like to
Do
kick a ball.
I like being outside, and I know when I take the dog for a walk, it feels amazing. I don't even use my phone. That's a CRP, is it? Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You've just reminded me of the absolute, excuse the word, obvious.
Yeah, you've just reminded what you've done
I
is
said, well, how do you
you're
think I made it? I didn't make this up. I said, I just put all these things in a box and thought, well, let's try and do something with that and try and make a logical sense. And I was a sales and marketing director. I was a coach as a golfer. And, I've been through all of that. And you said, let's try and put it in some sort of context. And we all love journeys. If you start with the first one, call them key sleep recovery indicators, part of the R90 technique, sleeping recovery cycles, yada, there's the pitch, is circadian rhythms, chronotype, sleeping and polyphasic cycles, creating a recovery rhythm to your day, and that involves CRPs and little moments and things that make you tick. Environment, I coach people to sleep anywhere, anytime, on anything, up the side of mountains, right? So all this bedroom and your fancy mattress and all this sort of stuff, yada, yada, yada. It's only a bedroom if you put a bed in it. And it's like, wow. Tent in the woods, bit of a fluffy thing on the floor blown up, polythene, zip, bang. 48 hours later, you're up eating breakfast, you're cracking on with the first part of your day, you're having a little break, something to eat, you love the rest of the day, you stop, and wow, the world is just not a better place, And then you just redefine your behavior, don't you? How does somebody do that? And that's what the journey is all about, is you start off here worrying about sleep with all these sort of things in the way.
Yeah.
And you're not doing anything about it apart from popping pills or just forgetting about it, or who cares, or there's another supplement. Oh, this app will sort it out, won't it?
Yeah.
This new tracker will sort it out.
Yeah.
Well, not really.
Yeah.
You're still going to the gym in your high-heeled shoes you need to talk to the personal trainer, because you ain't going nowhere with those things on your feet. So the tracker ain't going to help
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Nothing's going to help that. You're changing your diet. Can you just take those shoes off and put something better on? You know what I mean? So it kind of like takes you along that place, and then suddenly you just realize, like, I don't know what just happened to me, but it feels like the only thing it's not about regrets, but the only thing that I'm going to reflect on is I wish my parents were able to have at least brought me up with this mindset in their head,
Hmm.
because we would have spent probably more time outside. We would have
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
done things in slightly different ways. We probably might have had some moments where we all just stop and sit on the grass,
Mm.
and maybe sing. So I don't know what it is, but it's not about going backwards. It's their mindset would have been around me, so I would have gone up in those formative years, and so I would have been, and then my schooling, at least maybe in biology or something. Maybe they do these days, but I've been to a lot of schools and it doesn't sound like they do.
Mm.
But inside of that arena, I would have been, so I would have maybe in the most, wow, those adolescents, if I'd have had more tools,
Mm.
more awareness, I wouldn't say that my life would have been different or better or anything else, but I certainly know I was being asked to make choices, make decisions, create behavioral patterns. And all of those could have been really counterproductive to me as a person, even if I'd just known
Mm.
that don't tell me to do my homework
Mm.
at 6 o'clock in the evening
If that's
before I
fucking
go to
yeah,
bed.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
If I'm a nighttime chronotype,
Yeah,
let
yeah.
me do it at 12 o'clock.
You're gonna
Stop shouting at me.
because
Do you
what you
want me to pass or not?
because what you'll do in 10 minutes would take you
Oh,
10
God,
hours at
yes,
night time.
absolutely. Because we're moving into the twilight zone, right? Because it's late afternoon,
Mm.
right? And that means you ask me a question and it takes me 10 minutes to answer it. 6 o'clock in the morning,
Sharp
you're
as
going to get it like that,
it's
and
the
you ain't
same.
going to get any more. Do
I
you know
know.
what I mean?
I get.
We know we're like that. What about if I'd have known that when I was,
Yeah.
when puberty was kicking in and I
Yeah.
was all over the shop,
Mm.
and people were asking me to do, exams at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
In my O levels in those days, you're trying to get me doing
Yeah.
exams at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
What, are you crazy?
It's not going to work, is it? It's just.
Yeah, you absolutely crazy.
It's why entrepreneurs. I'm the same. If I had to go to do a task at 6, 7 o'clock
Yeah,
at night,
yeah.
I do that same thing in a tenth of the time. You're messing up with phones.
But if you know about how light can influence this,
Mm.
if you know about that
Yeah,
little
yeah,
30-minute period,
yeah.
so it's coming,
Mm.
so you can prepare.
Mhm.
And that's the bit. You can't change the world,
Yeah.
but what you can do is be more prepared. And if you're
Yeah.
thinking in 90-minute cycles, 16 cycles, every 24 hours, there's no Monday to Sunday.
Yeah.
It's just a rolling process of gathering your recovery, and stop worrying about your sleep and just keep that going, and you'll get an 80% factor coming through. It's never going to be perfect. Some days it'll go off and on, but it'll be far more consistent, far more sustainable, because you've got that rhythm. And that's the key that I would have loved to have known. I don't think I would have passed my exams any better or worse. Maybe that would have led me to go to university. Maybe that would have led me to go on to do all sorts of things. I don't know about that. But what I do know is I really struggled in lessons in the afternoon. And if that was maths, you can forget it. I have no idea what 2 + 2 is. In the morning, I know it's 4. In the afternoon, is it 4? Do you know what I mean?
It's so true.
And it's sort of like, I wished, because if I'm going into that lesson knowing, then maybe I could have walked around the block and got a bit of daylight, because I know about that. Maybe that's going too far. But at least what I know is in that lesson, I just need to take that, go home, and look at that again tomorrow morning. Then I'll get it. Not while I'm in there. So I need to make notes like mad, right? write it down like mad. So, but I didn't. So basically, I got about 5% of that lesson,
Yeah.
and you fail.
Yeah.
And you think, well, I'm not unintelligent. Why did I only get those? Why did I miss out? So it's crazy, isn't it?
I get it, Nick. There's so much
You know,
gold in there, mate. You are
well, it is,
you
isn't
are
it?
you're an absolute machine. Listen,
It's nuts, isn't it?
right?
But it's
Please,
never too late, is it?
no, never too late. Absolutely.
Whatever age you are, whatever you do, whatever's going on in your life, whatever you're concerned about or not, it is never too late, and it happens very, very quickly. You can shift it from there to there so quick.
It's a perfect place to end. Please check Nick Littlehales out. Very humble man, but Nick, you're a machine the way you think.
I won't answer emails between 4 and 4:30 because I'm actually got another client. It's called me and my time.
That's any entrepreneur, business owner listening to this lesson. 4 to 4:30. Make some time for you. Work out what your controlled recovery period thing is, and you'll be perform a lot better for that. So, Nick, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everyone listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you.